Yo, listen. Imagine creating a sitcom so controversial that churches, religious organizations, political activists, newspaper columnists, and angry parents all unite with one mission. Cancel this show immediately. Nah, for real. That actually happened with All in the Family. And the craziest part is this was happening during the 1970s on network television. Not cable, not streaming, network television. Millions of Americans watching every week while outrage exploded across the country. And I am telling you right now, modern television controversy has nothing on what this show went through. Today people complain online for a few days and then move on. Back then, people were writing furious letters to CBS by the thousands. Religious leaders were condemning episodes publicly. Entire organizations were demanding advertisers pull sponsorships. Families argued at church gatherings about whether the show was poisoning American culture. That is the level we are talking about here. Welcome back, everybody. Today we are diving deep into the religious groups and moral organizations that tried to get All in the Family canceled, and why this legendary sitcom became one of the most divisive cultural in television history. And trust me, once you understand how intense the backlash really was, you start realizing just how fearless this show actually was. Now first, let us understand why the outrage became so explosive. Before All in the Family premiered in January 1971, most American sitcoms were safe, comfortable, sanitized. Families on television rarely discussed real political or social conflict. Problems were simple, morals were obvious, everybody hugged at the end. Then suddenly here comes Norman Lear with this adaptation of the British sitcom Till Death Us Do Part. And instead of avoiding controversy, he builds an entire series around it. You got playing Archie Bunker, this loud working-class conservative from Queens who openly says racist, sexist, and homophobic things at the dinner table. You got arguments about war, feminism, religion, civil rights, and politics happening constantly. The language felt shockingly real for television audiences at the time. And let me be clear about something. The religious backlash was not just because Archie said offensive things. It was because the show challenged the illusion that American families were united morally and culturally. All in the Family exposed division inside the home itself. That terrified people. One of the biggest groups attacking the show early on was the conservative watchdog organization called the Moral Majority Movement, later associated with figures like. Though the backlash actually started even before that movement fully exploded nationally. Religious critics believed television should promote traditional values clearly and directly. They saw All in the Family as dangerous because it used comedy around subjects they considered sacred or socially destructive. And trust me, some church leaders absolutely hated the ambiguity of the show. That ambiguity is the key to understanding everything. See, Archie Bunker was obviously flawed, but the show did not always humiliate him completely. Sometimes Archie made emotional points audiences sympathized with. Sometimes liberal characters looked arrogant too. Religious groups wanted clearer moral lines. They wanted television to say this is right and this is wrong with no confusion. Norman Lear refused to do that. And now for real, that refusal made the show revolutionary. One major source of outrage came from the episodes dealing with religion itself. Archie constantly argued about Catholicism, Protestantism, atheism, Jewish identity, and changing social values. Jokes involving faith upset many viewers because television rarely treated religion with that kind of casual realism before. There is an episode where Archie debates religious and political ideas with such bluntness that some viewers accused the show of mocking Christianity entirely. Religious newspapers attacked CBS for allowing immoral family entertainment into American homes during prime time hours. Think about that phrase for a second. Immoral family entertainment. That sounds almost impossible today considering how tame network television later became compared to cable and streaming. But back then, All in the Family genuinely shocked mainstream America. And one of the most controversial flashpoints involved the show discussing sexuality openly. Religious groups became furious during episodes involving homosexuality, feminism, and women's reproductive issues. The cousin episode especially caused massive backlash because Archie discovers a deceased relative was secretly gay. Now check this out. The episode does not portray gay characters as monsters or punchlines. Instead, it exposes Archie's ignorance and discomfort. For many conservative religious organizations during the early 1970s, even presenting homosexuality sympathetically on television crossed a line. And here comes my first huge hot take. I honestly believe the reason religious groups feared All in the Family so much was not because the show insulted religion directly. It was because the show encouraged audiences to think critically instead of blindly accepting social norms. That is what scared them. The series constantly forced viewers into uncomfortable emotional territory where no simple answer existed. That kind of storytelling threatens rigid ideological certainty. And let us talk about the disclaimers because this part is fascinating. CBS literally added warnings before episodes aired. The network explained the program sought to throw a humorous spotlight on human prejudices and weaknesses. Imagine needing a national disclaimer before your sitcom starts because executives fear social backlash. That alone tells you how intense the controversy became. Religious groups wrote organized complaint campaigns demanding sponsors withdraw support. Some local stations debated whether certain episodes should even air. Families contacted newspapers accusing the series of corrupting younger viewers. And honestly, the irony is unbelievable, because the show often contained stronger moral lessons than many family-friendly programs. Take the famous assault episode. Oh man! Jean delivers one of the most heartbreaking performances in television history as faces an attempted sexual assault inside her home. Religious critics condemned the subject matter immediately because they believed topics like this had no place in sitcom entertainment. But here is the thing people overlook. The episode treated with dignity and humanity. It did not exploit trauma for cheap thrills. It forced audiences to confront violence women feared in everyday life. And trust me, that emotional honesty made some viewers deeply uncomfortable because television had traditionally hidden those realities. Another massive source of outrage involved race. Archie Bunker constantly used offensive stereotypes and language while arguing about integration and civil rights. Religious organizations worried audiences might interpret the humor as approval instead of satire. And to be fair, this debate still exists today. Some people watched Archie and saw a warning about prejudice. Others identified with him emotionally despite his flaws. Norman Lear intentionally left space for both reactions. That complexity drove critics insane because the show refused easy categorization. Now here comes another hot take. I think modern television often underestimates audiences emotionally. All in the Family trusted viewers to navigate discomfort and contradiction themselves. Religious groups wanted safer storytelling because safe storytelling protects certainty. But real life is messy. Families are messy. Faith is messy too sometimes. That honesty is exactly why the show still feels alive decades later. And we gotta give respect to O because playing Archie Bunker required unbelievable balance. Off-screen, O himself was politically liberal and highly educated. But on screen, he made Archie feel completely authentic. Not a cartoon, not a monster. A human being shaped by fear, tradition, pride, and insecurity. That realism is what made religious critics nervous. Archie sounded too real, too familiar, too much like actual conversations happening in millions of homes. The show also terrified traditional moral organizations because younger audiences connected strongly with Michael, played by Rob. Michael challenged Archie constantly about racism, war, religion, and social progress. Suddenly, television was validating generational rebellion instead of automatically siding with parental authority. And now, for real, that was revolutionary. Before All in the Family, sitcom fathers were usually wise authority figures. Archie Bunker was deeply flawed, sometimes ignorant, sometimes wrong, sometimes sympathetic anyway. That complexity changed television forever. And the success of the series made the backlash even worse, because the show became #1 in America for 5 straight seasons. Think about how frustrating that must have been for groups trying to cancel it. The more they protested, the more popular it became. That is another reason I think the series remains legendary. It proved audiences were hungry for television that reflected real social tension instead of fantasy perfection. And let us not forget the spin-offs because those made religious critics even more nervous. Tackled abortion and feminism directly. They explored race and class issues from a Black perspective. Good Times confronted poverty and inequality. Norman Lear basically transformed sitcoms into cultural debate arenas. And here comes maybe my biggest opinion of the whole video. I honestly think many religious groups accidentally proved the importance of All in the Family by trying so hard to silence it. Because the intensity of the backlash revealed how deeply the show touched real American anxieties. Television had become more than entertainment. It became a battlefield over national identity itself. That is why people still study this show in universities. That is why critics still debate its legacy. That is why modern sitcoms continue borrowing ideas Norman Lear introduced more than 50 years ago. And trust me, whether people loved the show or hated it, almost everybody had an opinion about it. That level of cultural impact is incredibly rare. Now let me ask you something. Could a sitcom today survive this kind of backlash? Could a network risk offending viewers this aggressively every single week? Honestly, I am not sure. Part of me believes audiences still crave honest, complicated storytelling. But another part of me thinks modern corporations are too terrified of controversy now. Social media outrage moves too fast. Networks panic immediately. All in the Family survived because it existed during a unique moment where television still took creative risks, despite enormous pressure. At the end of the day, the religious groups that tried to get the show canceled failed because the series tapped into something bigger than politics or ideology. It captured the sound of America arguing with itself. Loudly, painfully, honestly. And maybe that is why people still cannot stop talking about it today. Drop a like if you think All in the Family changed television forever. Subscribe for more deep dives into legendary television history. Share this video with somebody who loves classic sitcoms. And hit that notification bell because we are gonna keep exploring the shows that sparked cultural earthquakes across America.